and then pledge of allegiance.
Father, thank you for this day. Father, thank you for this time when we can get together with friends and fellowship. And Father, talk about this sport that we enjoy so much with this. Thank you for the beauty of your creation, Father, and for all of your many blessings to us. Thank you for loving us, for forgiving us our sins. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 To the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Okay. All right. Introduce the new members. See none. Good.
Sorry, Mike. Recording in progress.
Okay. Membership report.
Hang on, I'll tell you what we got.
Okay.
We currently have 94 people on our roll with 53 that are up to date on their dues.
Okay. So if you haven't paid your dues, please pay them. If you're planning on going to the fishing competition, it's little boat. You're not eligible unless you're up to speed on your dues. Okay. Mixed bag report.
Mixed bag, we have 29 entries thus far, which is really good, being just under 2 months into the, do what?
I got 3 in my pocket.
Yeah, 3 in your pocket. But they're not on there, Mike, you know, it's like,
I just called them.
yeah, down in the pond down here. Oh, okay, gotcha. But so that's 32 then we have. We'll have entries after just 2 months, so that's really good.
Probably last year, year before, she used to come down and see.
Okay, whoever that was, I just muted them. Let's see, we have 8, 6, and a couple with 3. The lead has 8 right now, 6 is second, 3, there's a couple with 3 that are third, and then a couple 2s and 1s after that.
Okay. Good. Everybody get out and fish. Anybody here out here not fish? This January 1st? Keep going, guys. I kept mine, most of them in the ditch. Anybody got anything on saltwater, Bill?
No, I don't have it.
Casting. Casting will begin again next week behind the library here before meetings at 5:30 because we're going to daylight saving time.
Understand some of the issue here.
To be plenty of sunshine. Chris, Bill, Ted, we got right there. Good. Casting. Education. We got no education. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have a fly fishing 101. We haven't
Go
contacted.
22
before,
minutes.
so
Oh,
we got it.
22 minutes.
It's April. It's gonna be in April. Fly fishing 101.
Hold on a second.
April 22nd.
May 22nd.
No, April.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I got it in places. Yeah, okay, yeah, April 22nd. That's what I meant to say. Thanks. All right. Tailwater, Kaufman, you want to say anything about Little Mo coming up?
Just that, you know, the plans are being made for the Little March Brown trip, March 23rd through 26th. By the way, there is an opening in Swaha House for 1. If anyone's interested in reserving that, they can get in touch with me. With announcements will be coming out, a notice will be coming out with more details here in the next few days.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Said membership. Okay, other events, I sent out an email today, obviously with one mistake on it, at least about what fly fishing 101 is. But we've got several things coming up. Don't forget that this coming Saturday, Baton Rouge, Red Stick Day is their gala, whatever you want to call it, but fly tying, casting instructors, two kinds of fishing. March 12th, which is Sunday, when we go to daylight saving time again. Like I said, fly casting begins at 5:30 p.m. 17:30, understand that. March 20th is our annual picnic at Lake Field. Yes, if we made arrangements out there yet.
What?
That date, March 20th for the,
Yes.
okay,
So spring picnic.
they're in there for the pavilion. Okay, good. Usually that starts at what time?
You can go out there about 4:30, 5 o'clock, wherever you want to go in the afternoon, but we usually start the cooking at 6 o'clock.
Okay. so
And we're ready to eat between 6:30 and 7.
Cooking starts at 6. Usually there's water and hamburgers and hot dogs, condiments, and if you want anything to drink with alcohol in it, bring yourself. Be careful on the way out. March round trip, Carlton was talking about the 23rd to 26th of March. And then I penciled in a board of directors meeting on March the 27th. Since we have this room reserved already, if that works out for the board, we'll get together here and discuss things. And then Carlton mentioned, Cindy, I don't know if you're on this email, that all of us getting together for how we're gonna work the start of the fishing tournaments for us, taking money, the flies and, you know, the extra flies. And getting everybody out of there, recording all the fishing calls and this kind of business. So we can do that March 27th to be afterwards. So we need to have probably a get together on Thursday, maybe. Thursday, good for people or good for me.
Which Thursday?
This Thursday or next Thursday.
Can't make it this Thursday.
One or the
I
other.
couldn't make it Thursday.
I'm not involved in that.
Yeah, make it-
We'll get to that.
Yeah. we'll get there.
Okay. well,
Because
Everybody's here.
there's just like 3 of us, I think. so.
Yeah.
Just so Kristen might need to be there too, right?
I'm hoping.
Okay, all right. Okay, other things coming up, we'll cover that in the next membership meeting.
What's fly time?
Johnson, hang on a second. Jim's got something. Look at it.
What's the fly time for next month?
For March is the March Brown Flint, Pete Bitties pattern.
Okay.
And then you're in April. And then my memory, we've got the whole year.
Chris has got May, and I've got June.
Chris has May and you got June. Okay.
All right.
Okay, Mike, last week, or week before last, Red Stick Fly Fishers had a meeting and it's online on YouTube. And it was, let's see what his name is. Anyway, it's an inland fisheries biologist, Robbie Maxwell. It's like, it's over an hour long. And he goes over fish identification, all that. It's like an ichthyology class. I mean, you probably get a credit for it if you sit through the whole thing and take a test. I mean, it's that detailed. And it's pretty impressive. I got the link, but I got to figure out how to send it forward.
Is it live or is it something?
It was live, it was recorded. It was on Down South Fly Fishing's got it on his site.
Okay,
And it's pretty informative.
that's our next regular meeting.
No, I tell you, watch it at home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you need to go sit and drink coffee and watch this.
Yeah.
We'd be here a while. It was
We
over an hour
we spoke to
long.
Robbie Maxwell about coming here and talking sometime in May or June.
He is really, it was really.
So,
Okay. So. Never mind. Okay, too many things written on here. Everybody know what a flint is? It's a cross between a nymph and a dry fly, I think.
It's basically just a simple soft tackle, really, is what
Well,
it
it's the same
is.
thing, but.
As an emerger, he fishes it like an emerger, so.
Yeah, it's like the What I'm trying
It's
to.
very- like an A&W sort of, said not those colors and it's not shaped like that. So I guess it's not that much like an A&W. But it fishes just a few inches under the water.
Looks like a long creek.
Yeah, and it's not weighted like a Long Creek.
Okay.
So it's its own thing, kind of, yeah.
If anybody has a good crane fly pattern.
One right there.
We got plenty of them.
Carlton, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yeah, will.
Thank you. Those of you who are new here, this is Carlton Township.
Probably back in November, I was fishing on a little mower, talking to Mike Ingram, who is our resident expert that lives on the river up there. And he mentioned that he had been in contact with Christy Graham, who is, I'm not sure what her title is, but probably high up in the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. And so I got in touch with her via email and asked if she could arrange a presentation for us on the condition and fishing on the Little Missouri River. And she said, yeah, she certainly could, but a staff member would probably do it, and told me who his name was, Ryan Gary, two first names. And it just so happened that a week or so later, I was on the Little Mo, and Ryan was there conducting a Creel survey, and got to meet him and talk to him about it. And I didn't know that he would be the one that would be doing the presentation, but he said, yes, it would be him. And so I stayed in contact with him, and we made all the arrangements for him to give us a presentation tonight. So Ron Gary, take it away.
All right, Ryan, let me spotlight you. All right, you're up.
All right, let's get this on the screen. Can you guys hear me?
Is that too loud or is it?
No, it's perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, can y'all see that?
We can, yes.
Which one is okay, is it full screen?
It is.
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I appreciate the introduction, Carlton. It was nice to meet you while I was down there. Christy Graham is my supervisor. She's my boss, and she is the lead trout biologist for the state of Arkansas. And I am Ryan Gary, and I am a trout biologist as well. So there's three of us that make up the Trout Management Program. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about the Little Missouri River, some of the aspects of it, some stocking, and that ongoing creel that Carlton mentioned, as well as some of the responsibilities of the Trout Management Program. And so with that being said, a little bit of an introduction into who I am. I've been in the fisheries science world for a little over a decade now in some aspect, whether that's as a technician pursuing an education or my current role as a biologist right now. And I did get my undergraduate degree in fisheries science at LSU. I got my master's degree at Oklahoma State University, and I feel really privileged and lucky because if you couldn't tell from the pictures on the screen, one of my favorite things to do is fish for trout. And so I feel very privileged and lucky to be able to be a trout biologist where I get to research and manage and study these rivers and the fish in them, while at the same time being able to go out and recreate and fish on them as well. So what do we do as the Trout Management Program and myself as a trout biologist? So the main thing that we do are our annual population surveys, and you guys may have heard of these. It's where we go out onto the rivers, onto our fisheries, and we do electrofishing surveys. So we put electricity into the water, it stuns those fish, and then we net those fish and we can collect biological data. So we can look at the abundance of them, how many are there, how many of each species are there. We can look at lengths and weights to see different size structures of the fish. And this is just really a great way for us to manage the health and look at the health of these rivers over a long-term period. So we have data on these rivers annually from these annual population surveys, some of them going back 10, 15, 20 years. And what that allows us to do is really look at those long-term trends, see how the health of the river is changing. Are we seeing more trout? Are we seeing bigger trout? Are we seeing smaller trout? Things like that to just help us assess, how the populations and how the rivers are doing. One of the other things we do is specific research projects. Those are going to be a little bit different than those annual population surveys, which are looking at, that long-term data and the health of those rivers. These research projects are going to be focused on an individual question. So something like how fast are trout growing in a certain river, or how are they moving about the river, or how does catch and release areas affect the trout populations? So these are going to be more targeted questions that help with our management and regulations on the rivers. And then we kind of use those two things. We use those annual population surveys, our long-term health manager, and then our research projects. We use those two to kind of influence our adaptive management and regulation. So we don't have the same management and regulations on any one fishery. We use those population surveys and the research for each individual fishery to create specific management and regulations for those fisheries tailored to what our anglers want and what that fishery can best provide. And we hope through those population surveys and our research that we can create management and regulation that provides really quality fisheries for people like yourself and myself to go out and enjoy. And so a part of that is also stocking in the state of Arkansas. And we stocked about 1.44 million trout last year. The two most prolific are going to be rainbow trout and brown trout that are stocked in most of our fisheries. We also do stock brook trout and cutthroat trout in some fisheries, but we've kind of only limited to those to fisheries and rivers where they do best in. We've stocked cutthroat and brook trout throughout the state of Arkansas, but we've really kind of narrowed it down to a couple systems where they really do great. And we'd like to allocate those resources into those fish, to those rivers where they're going to be most successful and have the best chance for survival. And so the trout management program kind of manages trout in the entire state of Arkansas, and we kind of focus on two different styles of fisheries. We have our year-round stocking, so Bull Shoals, North Fork, Greer's Ferry. These are going to be tailwater fisheries or fisheries that have cold enough water to support trout year-round in a long stretch of river. And then we also have our seasonal stocking like Blakely, Carpenter, Remmel, and Narrows Tailwater. And while Narrows Tailwater does support a year-round trout fishery, it's not throughout the entire trout waters. So that's kind of why we do that seasonal stocking between October and May. And today we're going to be focusing on, the Little Missouri River, which is comprised of Albert Pike Recreation Area as well as the Narrows Tailwater. So if you don't know, the Little Missouri is dammed and at Lake Greason and creates Narrows Dam, and it provides the Narrows Tailwater and some cold water effluent from that dam that provides that trout fishery. But we also have a really great opportunity as well. If you haven't heard of it, it's called Albert Pike Recreation Area, where we stock trout in the winter. And it's a really, really cool fishery located in Montgomery County. It's only about 30 or 40 minutes away from Narrows Tailwater. And it's really beautiful opportunity to go. And if you're headed up to Narrows Tailwater or the general area, I would really encourage you to check it out. It's about a 1.5 mile stretch of river, and it has great access, really good parking and walk-in access to the whole stretch of river where it's stocked. It's situated right in the Ouachita Mountains, so it's a beautiful location, a really good small water fishery in the winter when we're stocking. And it's a really great opportunity, if you've had if you had a trip planned for a while. I know you guys were talking about a trip to the Little Mo up in March. If you guys have set aside a weekend, a couple months down the road, and then, a couple days before you get and you look at the generation schedule, and they're supposed to run water the whole weekend while you're down at the Narrows Tailwater, and it's going to be really difficult for you guys to wade fish there. Albert Pike Recreation Area is a great alternative to go to in those situations, or even if they're just generating in the morning and you want to go up and fish, or you're just looking for a change of pace. It's a great fishery that's about 30-40 minutes away from Narrows Tailwater. It's really pretty, small area, and we have some of our best catch rates on this section of river. So I would encourage you guys to go check it out if you weren't already aware of it. But in particular, we're really going to be focusing on Narrows Tailwater today. And Narrows Tailwater is about a 6.5 mile stretch of river starting at the dam, going all the way down to low water access bridge. And during the winter months when we're stocking, you can find fish south of the low water bridge, but that's where we officially stop stocking and we designate the trout waters. So we have a couple different management areas on the Narrows Tailwater. We have this top area, which is the year-round catch and release. So all fish in there, if they're caught, have to be released. And then right below that, beginning at Riverside Access, is our seasonal catch and release. And the idea behind that is that during the summer, we have some warmer water in the Narrows Tailwater, but that section of river, the seasonal catch and release during the summer, is you have to catch and release those fish. And the reasoning behind that is that short stretch of water right below the dam kind of provides cold enough water for those fish to survive. And so we want those fish to stay in there in the summer and provide people with opportunities to fish. And then additionally, just below Hines Bluff, we have the winter catch and release area. So that's going to be when we're stocking fish about, November through March. And the idea behind the winter catch and release is this low down on the river in winter, it provides great habitat, good cold water for those trout to survive. And that area is set aside for those fish to continue to grow and gain some size and provide some quality fish in there in the winter. But then come summer, not every year, but most years, we have, hotter water temperatures down in that area of the river, and it becomes harder for those trout to survive. So the idea is that we have a catch and release section down there for those fish to grow a little bit larger for people to catch when it gets too hot for them to survive later on in the year. Now, we do have some holdover trout down there that will survive the summers, but occasionally it does get really hot down there, and more years than not, we do have fish, we do have temperatures down there that are a little bit too hot for them. Additionally, stocking on Narrows Tailwater. So we average about 59,000 fish stocked per year on the Narrows Tailwater. And you can see on the left, we've got stocking numbers. So between 40 and 80,000 fish. And then on the bottom is years. So the past 10 years or so from 2011 to 2022. And what you'll notice about this graph is that it's pretty variable. There's a lot of ups and downs. And the main reason for that is that we have two different sources of fish that are stocked on the Narrows Tailwater. The first is from Jim Hinkle Hatchery up in Mammoth Springs, which is in northeast Arkansas. They do a really good job of providing fish. They raise those fish from eggs to catchable size. Those catchable size rainbow trout are going to be about 11 inches long. So some will be bigger, some will be smaller, but they average about 11 inches long. They provide some of the fish for the river. But the variability really comes from that second group of fish that we get from Narrows Tailwater. And those start out at Greer's Ferry National Fish Hatchery in Heber Springs. They hatch those rainbow trout from eggs and grow them out to a certain size. And then from that size, they're moved over to Jim Collins net pens on Ouachita Lake. And so sometimes we can have issues with water quality and disease in Greer's Ferry National Fish Hatchery, which affects how many eggs and how many hatches are produced. And then additionally, once they get moved to Jim Collins net pens in Ouachita Lake, there are striped bass on that lake that will actually chew holes into those net pens and sometimes get in there and eat a lot of those fish. And so that's where a lot of the variability comes from. Some years we'll do really good and we'll have 65, 68, even 71,000 fish stocked. Those are years where we don't have a lot of mortality associated with those striped bass, or Greer's Ferry sometimes will produce some surplus fish that move to Jim Collins net pens. In some years we have some additional mortality from those eggs or from those striped bass getting into the net pens. So that's really where the variability comes in how many numbers or how many fish get stocked in the Narrows Tailwater. Additionally, I know Carlton had some questions about fall rainbow trout stockings, and he had heard that we've seen some smaller numbers of stocking that have occurred in recent years. So I went and pulled the numbers, and this is the past 4 years of fall stocking. So you can see October, November, and December, and then the numbers stocked over on the left. 2019 and 2020, 2019 is blue, and you can't see that because it's hiding right behind that purple line. 2019 and 2020 are really what we shoot for those fall stocking numbers, and that's a very typical year. About 1,800 stocked in October, about 5,800 stocked in November, and another 5,800 stocked in December before we really start bumping those numbers up to about 10 or 12,000 a year or a month in January, February, and March. But what you'll notice in 2021 is that we stocked 0 fish in October, but we had a little bit of a surplus in November. And the reasoning for that was in 2021, we had really high water temperatures in October. We didn't want to stock those fish and have some mortality associated with those higher water temperatures. And so we held off, and those fish got stocked in November, which is why we had a little bit of a surplus than the typical 1,800 or the typical 5,800 that we usually put in November. Although you will notice in 2022, we did have a little bit of a drop in our November numbers, which will hopefully be made up for in those later months like January, February, and March. So there has been a little bit of variability as well in the fall, but overall we've remained pretty good, and we haven't changed our stocking numbers drastically in the fall. Additionally, I know there were some questions about how the flows affect the fish in the river. Recently, we've had some big water down at the Narrows Tailwater. We've had a bunker valve open, and we've been really seeing a lot of water come through. From everything that we've seen from our research and our tagging studies, we do see some fish move downriver. We don't really see a whole lot of fish exit the fishery entirely, and we see a good number that hang around. These fish are really good at hanging out in these eddies that you can see on the sides, behind signs or behind benches and trees. They really do a good job of finding these eddies on the periphery of the water until it can kind of come down. And so we really don't associate a whole lot of fish being lost with these high flows. And so kind of the last thing I want to talk to you guys about today is the ongoing Creel survey that Carlton talked a little bit about. So this is the 2022-2023 Little Missouri Creel survey going on, and it's occurring both in Albert Pike and Narrows Tailwater. And so if you guys have been up there already, like Carlton, you might have been interviewed, or if you guys are going up there in March, you might be interviewed for this Creel survey. And what this is for us is really a great census of the trout fishing population down on the Little Missouri River. So what we're interested in are the demographics. So where are people coming from? Are they anglers like yourself from Louisiana? Are they from Texas? Are they in-state? Are they bait fishermen? Are they spin fishermen? Do they use flies? Who are the people that are using our resource? Just kind of trying to get some information about that. And then also looking at other things like catch rates. Are people being successful? Are they catching a lot of fish there? Are they catching fish in this area more than another area? And then also just looking at overall fishing effort on the river. How many people do we have coming to this river, spending their time there? Are they fishing in one place more than others? Just trying to, gain a little bit of insight about who our fishermen, who our anglers are down on the river so that we can best manage this. And some preliminary data that we have, we found so far that about 90% of anglers are male. We have about 50% resident and 50% non-resident, so half and half. About 50% of those non-residents are coming from Texas, about 41% are coming from Louisiana, and then the rest of that is made up by Oklahoma and Tennessee. Average trip was 2 days, so a lot of people coming up for a weekend, either a Friday or a Saturday, Sunday. And then most people that are fishing this river, have fished it for about 9.5 days a year. Additionally, we also found that about 66% are using flies or fly fishermen, or about 22% are using artificial lures, and about 12% are using bait. And one of the things that I think is most interesting is this. About 4% of people are on guided trips, 97% are bank or wade fishing, and the average fish caught, or the average amount of fish caught per trip is about 8. And what this information really tells me is that this is a really quality fishery, a really accessible fishery for people to come. You know, if you're down in Louisiana and it's a far drive and, you know, you're nervous about spending a lot of time in the car or going up to a river you've never been before, this information is really telling me that you don't have to have a guide. You don't have to have a boat to come up here and be super successful. People come up here and they're wade fishing, they're using fly rods, they're unguided, and they're having a lot of success in catching a lot of fish. And these trips aren't necessarily 8 and 10-hour days on the river. You know, there might be somebody who comes up for 3 or 4 hours and is catching 8 or 10 or 20 fish, something along those lines. So I think that's really cool. So I would encourage you guys, if you're nervous at all, you're new river, never been there before, it's a really great place. It's good wade fishing. It's really accessible. And I would really encourage you guys to come up and visit. And the last thing, if you've been interviewed so far, you might have received a mail survey. Or if you're going to be interviewed and you're going to be up on the Little Missouri, hopefully you'll receive a mail survey. And I would really encourage you guys to fill this out and send it back to us. The Creel survey that I was doing, talking about the interviews of anglers, that's really about that trip, you know, that day in particular, what you're using that day, where you're fishing that day, how many fish you caught that day. The mail survey is really about your opinions on the fishery. Do you want more fish stocked? Do you want more catch and release areas? Should people that are using bait on the river be required to use a circle hook? Questions like these. And this information is really helpful for me when we go to look at the management strategies and our regulations on the river, to really take account for what the people who are spending time on the river, our constituents, our anglers that are using this resource, you know, what do they feel about it? What do they think this river needs? And it's really important for us to get this information, especially from people who are out there and fishing. It better informs us and allows us to better manage and put in better regulations that are more tailored to the people who are spending time on the river. And so with that, that's kind of all I've got for you guys today. I'm happy to stick around as long as you guys want and answer any questions you have. I think I touched most of what Carlton had sent me that you guys had questions on, but if you have any others, I'm happy to answer as many as you guys have.
Okay. Can you always mic that thing?
Yeah.
Oh, question I have is what, I guess the bugs are on the little mow. I mean, entomologists, or is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What bugs are on the little mow?
There's the bugs or the you know, the microinvertebrates that are on there are pretty specific to tailwaters, or pretty, you know, ubiquitous around tailwaters. So you're going to have a lot of scuds, a lot of sow bugs, a lot of midges, things that can tolerate those cold temperatures year round. And that's going to be more in the upper section. But as we kind of shift downriver to that lower section, you'll probably have a little bit more diversity because you have a little bit more variability in temperature. So some mayflies, things of that nature. But on that upper section where most of those trout are going to be for your year-round fishery, you'll probably see a lot of scuds and sow bugs and things of that nature. Pretty typical of a tailwater.
As a follow-up to that, what about bait fish? You know, streamer fishing, is it? I mean, we've caught fish on streamers there, you know, a lot of fish sometimes, but you don't see a lot of bait fish in the water, some, but what about that?
Yeah, there's definitely some bait fish in there. We do see, you know, smaller minnows and shiners and things like that. But the diversity of those is going to be a little bit lower just because of the tailwater, just because of those year-round cold temperatures. It's harder for a larger diversity of fish to survive in there. But you are going to have, you know, your minnows and your shiners, but they won't be as populated as, you know, some natural cool water or warm water streams.
So how about stoneflies?
I couldn't give you any actual numbers on them. I'm sure there's some, but we typically don't see too many stoneflies in our tailwaters in Arkansas. That's not to say they're not there. but we typically don't see, they're not as numerous, not as present in our Arkansas tailwaters.
What about smallmouth bass in the river? Some have been caught in the past. Who caught
Low water bridge.
low water down around low water bridge, old factory site down that far, some smallmouth. Are they native there or is that a stocking y'all do?
No, those are native. And also if you've been there and you've seen some of the riprap around some of the accesses, you know, those weirs, those were actually created to kind of build up the smallmouth population a little bit to create some more deeper water and standing water for those smallmouth to survive. They're not stocked, they're native in there. They don't do super well, so you're not going to see any, you know, real lunkers or some big smallmouth, but they are certainly in there and they're fun to catch. And you're probably better off fishing a little bit lower on the river if you're targeting those. So like you said, around low water bridge and areas like that. So they are native down there, but there's just, again, because of that cold water, they're not growing as fast.
Now, the follow-up to that, do they extend as far down as like the state park at Crater of Diamonds? Because I fished down there and all I've caught down there is spotted bass.
I'm not positive. I only handle the trout waters. So all my surveys and information are down pretty much to low water bridge and maybe a little bit further down there. So I can't really speak to that area, but I'm happy, you know, to get in contact with our district biologist down there and ask him and see if he has any information on that for you.
Hey, Ryan, what's the status of brown trout in Little Mo?
The status, we currently stock about 600 brown trout per year on the Little Missouri River. And they get stocked in October or November each year, depending on water temperatures. But I will say that we haven't really had very many turn up in the Creel. And Carlton was talking about Mike down there. He's, you know, a staple, lives on the river, fishes down there a lot. And he doesn't see too many brown trout down there. So we do put them in numbers typical or a ratio typical to our other tailwaters. So we stock around, like I said, 59,000 per year. Rainbow trout, we stock about 600 brown trout. That's a ratio that's very similar to our other tailwaters, typically because brown trout are more aggressive, more fish-based predators. And so you want to stock them in lower numbers so there's sufficient food for them to grow large versus the rainbow trout, which are more, you know, focused on insects and things of that nature. But we just don't really see that they do very well in the Narrows tailwater for whatever reason. We're not entirely sure why, because for the most part, brown trout do better than rainbow trout in almost all our other tailwaters in the state. So we do put them in at a similar ratio to other tailwaters in the state, but for some reason, we're not really sure why, but they don't seem to do as well in Narrows tailwater as they do in some other places.
So why don't you stock the cutthroat or the brookies in the Narrows? I mean, just, is it the water temperature or is it?
We don't see them doing as well. So we've limited cutthroat stocking to just Norfolk tailwater and Bull Shoals tailwater, and we've limited brook trout stocking to Greer's Ferry tailwater, Norfolk, and Bull Shoals tailwater. And that's where we see the best success with those fish. And even so, we don't see very much success with brook trout. Brook trout do not do very well in any of those tailwaters. They're kind of a novelty species. I think if you would talk to most anglers that fish those tailwaters religiously, many of them never catch a brook trout over 12 or 13 inches. They just don't do very well. They don't survive very well in those tailwaters. And it's kind of the same story with cutthroats. Cutthroats do a lot better than brook trout. We do see some really quality cutthroat trout in the fisheries where we stock them. But we've stocked them in other tailwaters throughout the state, and they just don't do very well. And because of that, we kind of focus our resources on those tailwaters where they're successful. So we don't really see brook trout or cutthroat trout being very successful on Narrows tailwater, which is the primary reason that we don't allocate those resources down there.
Ryan, how did you end up at LSU?
That's a great question, and a question I get all the time, because I'm originally from Baltimore on the East Coast, and my dad is also a fisheries biologist like myself. My dad got his undergraduate degree at Texas A&M, and my sister went to Alabama. And so I went and watched a SEC football game down in Tuscaloosa and said, I got to be in the SEC. And but Alabama does not have a fishery science program. And so I made a little pivot, and we ended up down in Baton Rouge.
I have a
Right choice.
I would agree.
Hey, Bill, can you hear me? It's Robert.
Yes. Yeah, we've got you, Robert. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you about the tiger trout. I know that's sort of an experimental deal on the white, and we catch one. We go up there once a year, a group, and we catch at least one or two every time we go. How are they doing?
The tiger trout are doing great, and we want to stock some more of those. We stocked 2 groups of them, I think in 2019 and 2020, only about 2,500 a stocking, I would say. And all of those got put into the Bull Shoals catch and release area just below the dam. That's something that we really want to do more of. We tried to stock those in 21, but we unfortunately had an issue, and we had a big die off, and so we weren't able to stock the full allotment that we've raised. And then in 22 last year, we're renovating completely the Jim Hinkle fish hatchery where they're raised. And so there wasn't any room at the hatchery for them to be raised. But next year they will certainly be being raised, and we really want to put them back in there. We're not going to stock them at the same numbers that we do our other species. We want to keep them kind of a novelty. I think it's really cool to have the ability to catch that fish. They're growing really well. We've seen some big ones, they're probably 2 or 3 years old, and some are reaching sizes of 23, 24 inches, which is really phenomenal growth. So we want to continue stocking them, and we're planning on continuing stocking them. But we're going to keep it at those low numbers. We don't want them to become, we don't want them to start competing with the other fish that are in the river, and we want to kind of keep them as a novelty or a surprise. Because I've caught 1 or 2, and it's just really fun to have the opportunity to catch that different species and see those colors, and they're really pretty, and they're starting to put on some size. So that's definitely something that we're wanting to continue.
Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, I have a question. Why isn't the cattle below the Great Lake stopped?
Say that again?
Why isn't the Caddo River below the Great Lake stopped with trout?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not too familiar with that system. So I'm not quite sure. I can certainly find the answer to that question. And I can get your email or your phone number afterwards, and I can certainly look into that for you. But off the top of my head, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, my youngest son's a fisheries biologist, and he went over there a week ago and fished that part of the Caddo, and it looks beautiful. It looks like the upper part of the Little Missouri.
Yeah, where is it located?
Near Arkadelphia.
Okay.
At the Gray
Yeah.
Lake, just south of Hot Springs there.
Okay, yeah. It might have to do with temperatures, and it might be a seasonal thing, but I can certainly look into that and get back to you on that.
That's headwater in it. Catch? Were they fishing?
Huh?
Was that the headwaters that they were fishing in Caddo?
No, below the Gray Lake Dam.
Below the tailwater. Okay. One other question I have, Ryan, we've got a base flow here when we're having no generation, which is pretty slow. And, we're pretty much a still water under those conditions. Would it be possible to, for the Wildlife and Fishery Group and or Corps of Engineers to increase that base flow a little bit?
Yeah, so that's something that we've only done on Norfolk Tailwater and Bull Shoals Tailwater. And they institute a minimum flow up there. And I would say that it certainly is possible on any of the tailwaters that we have on the state, although it is an incredibly lengthy and time-consuming and politically consuming process. And so in order for that to happen, at the very minimum, there would need to be a big public push for that, as well as a lot of political support from either a state senator or something along those lines, because it literally takes an act of Congress to enact minimum flow. That's what it took for Norfolk Dam and Bull Shoals Dam to get a minimum flow, was an act of Congress, and it was about, honestly, it was about a 30-year process, 10 years of about actual work. It was being pushed from the 80s and on, but beginning in 2000, the early 2000s was when the minimum flow studies and the paperwork and all the political work really got rolling. So it took about 10 years for all those studies and the congressional work for it to really happen. So I would never say it's not possible, but it would take a big push from the public, a huge amount of public support, as well as, a state senator or someone along those lines with some political pull to hop on and really push it, because it literally takes an act of Congress to get it. And there's no question that it would improve the fishery, having a little bit more flow coming through. It's done that for Bull Shoals and Norfolk, but it's a very time consumptive and politically consumptive process.
Years ago, they had some repair work going on the generator, or one of the generators on the dam, and they had a bypass flow situation going, which was really made a difference on the fishery. So we had a poor flow for a while.
Yeah, there's no question it helps the fishery, but it's really a matter. It's just very political, because it doesn't it affects, obviously the river below the dam, but it also, you have to enact certain studies on the lake and how that's going to affect the fluctuating lake levels and the property owners around the lake. And then you have to do scientific adjustments to like power pool and flood pool. So it takes an environmental study that goes into all of that. So it's pretty lengthy and time consuming, as well as expensive. Like I said, I would never say it's not possible, but it would need a lot of public support and some political support to get it done.
My grandkids will enjoy that.
So the last stocking in May, is that before the extended catch and release or after?
I would have to check on that. I don't know off the top of my head, but I would think they line up pretty close together, but I can get back to you on that for sure. I don't know off the top of my head.
Wondering if all ever considered putting more fish in the last May after the catch and release is extended, and maybe give us a larger fish count during the summer months.
Yeah, that can hold over. Yeah, I can check on that for sure, but I don't know off the top of my head whether they overlap.
Yeah, some years they survive really well, and some years they don't,
Yeah, definitely. It all depends on those water temperatures and what's going on with the dam.
Summer catch and release begins May 1st to May 15th.
I believe. And maybe.
You talking about at the park?
Yeah.
I think it's May 15th.
I don't remember. I never can keep
There's
this
just a
straight.
map out there that shows.
You can look it up on your iPhone.
It starts May 1st.
So that May stocking is after catch and release then.
Yes. And I can pull up the May numbers right now. Yeah, we typically stock about each year about 1,000 fish up there in the month of May.
And you put them in the upper reaches?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So yeah, typically once that closes down, we put about, on average, some years I'm looking at the numbers right now. Some years we've put as many as 3,000. And then some years we've also stocked, if temperatures are good, we've also about 2/3 of the years we've also put a stocking of about 1,000 in June as well up there.
Right. That's what I thought. Okay.
Any other questions here? Any questions on Zoom out there?
No, but it's been a great presentation though. Yeah.
Very good.
I appreciate it. I was happy to talk to you guys, and if you guys are, I'd be happy to come back once the Creel's over and kind of present, the full analysis of all the results and everything that we've learned before, because that, what I touched on right there was really just scratching the surface. So if you guys are interested, I'm certainly more than happy to come back and would love to give you guys a full breakdown once we complete the Creel.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gary. It was a very good presentation.
I appreciate it.
Some of us learned a whole lot.
Awesome.
You ever down here,
My name is Mark Brown.
I will.
Thanks a bunch. We appreciate
Hey,
it.
come eat fried fish with us at our club trip.
Okay, I might come down there. I'll have to plan. I go down there every month or two to just check in on the Creel, make sure everything's going all right. So I might have to do a little overlap down in March.
And they won't be fried rainbow out of the river.
Well, awesome.
So what's that? That's that Friday you do it? Yeah, that Friday of that last weekend that would come down the 23rd or 4th, whatever it is.
Nice. Well, I might have to do a little bit of overlap then, and I might see you guys down there. But awesome. If you guys don't have any more questions, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you guys inviting me to come out.
Well, we appreciate you coming. Thank you. That was really, really interesting.
Thanks, Ryan.
Awesome. Good to see you guys.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Yeah.
what y'all think?
Yeah.
That was really good.
Good job, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Excellent.
Yeah, Carlton, that was awesome. Thank you.
You said the upper river had, I thought some of, what's a sow bug? And what's a scud?
That's like a freshwater shrimp, little bit.
Yeah.
A scud is?
And sow bugs are little curved bugs. Look kind of like a
roly-poly.
roly-poly sort of in the water. Yeah.
That is another name for really cool.
Yeah.
So what was the other thing? You said scud, sow bugs. and
Midges.
something-
Midges.
Midges? Okay, that's still tiny, right?
Mhm.
You can't even see
Like-
them when you talk.
Like zebra midges and
Yeah.
other things.
Now, they need to get a fish net and come in and see what's really in this river. There's a lot-
What is it, Robert?
They've got a lot of stuff in this river. They got crawfish and minnows and shad and everything else.
Are there shad in the river?
Yeah, occasionally. And then, the March brown, they got several mayflies and caddis as well. So, and I do see some stoneflies on my back porch every once in a while as well.
Stoneflies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you ever fish a Pat's rubber leg there?
Not often. I fish a cloud. Started fishing a clouser a good bit though. They like it.
What size?
Size 12 hook. A mini clouser.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many people do we have?
Six.
Six?
Yep.
So the attendance was
24.
18 6 on Zoom, and 200 crane flies.
200 crank flies, that's right.
And,
Can you count who's on?
and I think they were triggered when they saw that image of the trout rising.
I had to go back.
I was just